Welcome to another episode of Japan's top business interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, your corporate coaching and guy, and I have a special guest today, Christian Wolf from JAS Forwarding. Thank you very much, Christian, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Greg, for having the opportunity. I very much appreciate.
Well, Christian, you're running a big operation here. You got a big operation going here in Japan, and you're running the whole show. So, Christian, tell me, how did you get to Japan, and how did you wind up running this organization here?
Well, I got to Japan. It was a pretty interesting story. When I was back in university in Germany, I did some logistics university with same time working at a company. And my boss at that time, he was the leader for Asia in terms of the route development. And I always told him, once I'm finished, I would like to have the opportunity to go overseas. And he asked me, where do you like to go? I say, that is depending on where are the opportunities. One day he called me and said, okay, Christian, we have an opportunity in Tokyo. However, you need to commit minimum 3 years, otherwise this is not going to work out. And that was basically the opportunity for me to step into Japan right after university.
So this was how many years ago now?
20 years ago.
So that 3 years is sort of elongated a bit.
Yes.
So you were what age at that stage when he said, okay, you're 3 years in Japan, let's go? How old were you then?
I came to Japan with 25.
Quite young, right? So to do what, though, in Japan? What was the job they had for you here?
I started in Japan as a route development manager for the company I used to work before. And this basically was a sales role, a pure business development role to develop new business for air freight and ocean freight transportation from Germany to Japan, from Japan to Germany. And then later on, it was also expanded to other German-speaking nations in Europe, like Switzerland and Austria. And this role was a very important role for our company in Germany because Japan was the second largest export market that the company at that time had. And coming to Japan with a young age, with 25, from a small village in southwest Germany to the big city like here, this was kind of a culture shock. But however, quickly I noticed that living in this country, you need to be very persistent and to be able to succeed, and you need to have a lot of, so-called frustration tolerance, because it was just so overwhelming to get into this culture and to be successful. So I worked in that company. We were bought by Deutsche Post and merged with DHL. And I worked in that company for 7 years, and then I wanted to basically do something else. I wanted to venture more into, I like to stay in Japan, and then I got a good opportunity to join a Swiss company, it was Panalpina, and work in the project forwarding business, which is a completely different setup as the general cargo route development, what I did before, because in the projects you're doing with large scale projects with heavy cargo, over-dimensional cargo, where you need to think a little bit out of the box, how to move these big pieces, the valuable pieces from the customer, to get them safe delivered to the destination. So I worked there in this project forwarding unit for 4 years with great colleagues and good customers. I could earn a lot of experience from that business. Also, what we could learn in that was exposure to very large contracts. So compared to the small pallet, what you are shipping of pair of shoes from Germany to Japan, or spare parts, automotive spares, suddenly the problems were far more complex because of construction schedules, liabilities involved, different kind of transport mode, like a chartering a vessel, a ship, a whole ship or part of the ship, and involving specialists from transport engineering who calculate meticulously how the pieces are moved. And that was very challenging and rewarding. And then in 2011, I had the opportunity to join JAS in Japan, who is a company that is in Japan already for 40 years, and set up a project forwarding unit from scratch. Zero business. And we started with a small team, recruiting the team, and then setting up that business and go out into the market and sell the services of a company that has not done any record in Japan on such complex transportations. So that again was a very challenging situation where you had on one hand, responsibility for all the people what you convinced to do that together, and also the responsibility to make that thing profitable over a relatively short time. So we worked very hard and got a couple of projects, small ones, spot shipments, awarded, and then we could create a good project forwarding unit in that company. And then somehow in 2014, my predecessor here in this company has left. And then our CEO from Just Forwarding in Atlanta, Marco Rebuffi, asked me whether I would like to take the challenge to step into and leading Just Forwarding here in Japan, a company that is in Japan already 40 years now. And I considered about that well, and then I accepted it. And I have to say that it is a very good decision to do that and go forward. However, this also gave a lot of challenges to learn in managing such a business with about 100 employees in Japan.
So, yeah, you've gone from a small team to 100 people, right? So what were some of the challenges? I mean, by this time you'd been in Japan a while, so the whole Japan thing was probably more clear to you. But what were some of the challenges of being a leader with forming a new team?
Well, it is quite difficult in the beginning to gain the trust. I mean, to have a positive attitude and a never give up attitude, even you know that things did not go so well sometimes, right? I mean, especially in Japan, I mean, you are quoting all the time and there's not coming a business out. It's not like in overseas where you go into the customer, okay, here's my rate, and how about the price, and why won't you start next week? It is not working in Japan like that. You need to gain a trust from the customer. And it is not seldom that you are quoting for over 1 year without seeing one piece of cargo. It's a very common process. And there, even you have a lot of setbacks, you need to be calm and need to demonstrate that we are going to get there.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. So, your team too, they must be very frustrated. They know they've come into a new business, so they expect it's going to be hard. But, if you're working every week, doing the quotes, seeing the clients, work, and no results, you have to have a lot of self-doubt. You've got to be, a bit depressing. You feel you're not succeeding. As the leader, how did you deal with that to keep that? Because you have to keep yourself up, but you've also got to keep them up. How did that work?
Well, I mean, we set targets for us right in the beginning that we would like to grow with a steady business. And you cannot come in and expect that you are going to land huge contracts tomorrow. You have to start from scratch, right? So you have to be happy if you get one pallet. You have to be happy if you get an air shipment, or you have to be happy if you just get a study for able to succeed new quotations. So what we did, we basically said, okay, well, target number one is to be able for this client to be able to give our proposals, and so you have to cut down your expectations and piece them smaller, and then you can also generate rewarding situations. Yes, we have received this shipment and we received that client, and that over time helped to gain. And then at one point you get a kind of a momentum in where things come.
But how do you keep people going when you haven't got to the momentum part? It's zero, and then next month it's zero, and 3 months after that it's still zero, and 6 months after that it's still zero. What do you say to people? How do you get people to believe we can do this, keep going, don't give in? You said don't give in, right? That's you, right? But what about people who maybe aren't as strong as you, or don't have the vision you have, or they're just working in the company and they think they're wasting their time? Maybe my career is going the wrong direction. I'm not getting anywhere here. How do you keep those people buoyant?
With open and honest communication.
And what does that mean?
Open and honest communication means that you need to have a good communication with everybody in your team, and you also need to talk about the positive things. You need to talk about small things we achieve, and you need to lay out the concept and say, okay, I mean, now we are here and that's where we want to go, and look how much we have already achieved.
So you're giving them some perspective, yes. Because when you're working hard, you're getting nowhere, you forget, well, actually you've now got 20 clients you're talking to when you had no clients before, type of thing. So to give them some history, give some perspective, to also give them some hope, I guess. So that's quite a good point, yeah. What else did you do?
I worked hard.
Worked hard. Everyone's working hard, right? So how long did it actually take for the momentum to really kick in?
It took about 1 year.
And the company, the thing there is, the company supporting that, because for a lot of foreign companies, they don't have that Japan patience factor. They're like, hey, Wolf, where are the results? You've been there for 12 months, nothing's happening. As long as the company understood and they supported you, that makes it worthwhile. So presumably they did support you.
I mean, this was basically a concerted approach, because what JAS did is at that time in 2011, our CEO had the vision that he would like to create a project forwarding unit around the world. So what he did is he recruited 65 people and started this project business unit from scratch around the world. And with all those people and the network, at that time we had the client relationships, we had the network, we had the expertise to be able to offer such complex transport solutions, and also to be able to quote in certain way. And with the team in the back in that business unit around the world, there was a certain project experience or a certain business experience there, which also gave the confidence to the client that, okay, the name is new, the expertise is there, and the trust is there.
So for your team, was it frustrating for them, given what we talked about before, the speed of doing business in the West compared to Japan, that they're seeing these other 65 colleagues around the world getting deals, doing work, actually getting contracts, quoting, getting business, and here we are in Japan grinding. Was that frustrating for them, or was that inspirational for them to say, hey, this can work, it can be done, we're getting track record here. We're not getting in Japan, but at least we're getting track record. How do they perceive that, and how did you help them to see that?
We had open communication on what projects are awarded around the world and what is the status of the business, or on which projects were hot or which shipments were hot, and somehow shared the success.
So that gave them some hope.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you went from running that unit, and how many people are in that unit?
There was 11.
11, right? So you've gone from running an 11-person unit to running a 100-person unit, the whole company.
Yes.
So he calls you up and he says, okay, Christian, I want you to take it over. It's a challenge, but, and you say, okay, I'm going to give it a go. How is that perceived? Because you say it's a 40-year-old company. You've had probably a lot of senior people, Japanese, been here for a long time. They didn't get asked to step up and take over the job. They asked you to do that. So how did you sort that part out?
Well, it was in the beginning, we had some stones in the way, and we had to basically work us through.
So how does that work? I mean, Japanese, a 100-person company is bound to have departments, divisions. You have powerful people running different divisions, They probably thought they should have got the job. Why didn't I get the job? I've been doing this for a long time. This guy got the job. Do I really want to cooperate with him? So you're doesn't matter, it's just Japan, anywhere. That's always a very tricky position. So how do you encourage them to believe in you and to follow you?
Well, I mean, if you come in as a leader in a large organization in Japan, eventually you are posted from your head office into Tokyo on a certain assignment, and you come in. I mean, what I did not do any changes in the first year, any major changes in the first year. Was
that a particular strategy you had? A decision you made? I'm not going to do anything to change anything for the first year?
No, that was not a particular strategy. I have seen a lot of things in the companies previously, or also what you hear in the network, that managers come in and no experience in Japan, and everything is not good. And I don't like that. I mean, in Japan, you have to really consider, okay, well, I mean, this company came a long way today. They did not wait for me to come in and make a lot of changes. So you need to respect every department or every business division or branch head, and need to look in what they have done, from where they come from, how have this, what has led to the setup as it is now. So I had a lot of conversations, with several people in the company to understand where we come from, and to understand also what was done in the past, what didn't work out, what were the obstacles they had in doing that. And by doing this, I could learn from many managers in this company on how the things went. And by that, I could also establish, the way to go forward. I mean, the way to go forward at that time was basically, we would like to grow. We would like to become a more modern company at that time. And we have seen that there was a need for a lot of changes along what the global head office brought in, a lot of changes in introduction of new IT systems, in making the process more efficient, and in making the business, setting it up for growing into the future. And what I did is that I basically kept the main department managers in place and looked how the development of the company is done, or how the things were developing. We're setting goals, we're setting targets, and we're working on certain processes to improve. And then along that, once I understood how certain things work in this company, apart from what I have done before in the small department that was set up from scratch, also brand new in this company, I could then start to making some changes, and which also are considerate and also coordinated with the management, because the ultimate goal is to make this company better, to grow this company sustainably, and also always have our customer in mind. Our customer is the most important business partner we have in this company, because they are paying our bills. And a lot of times there have been made mistakes in other companies from the outside view. What you hear is some manager comes in and then they don't understand the process, how it works in Japan, how a lot of things are interlinked together, and come and try to make changes, and then it doesn't work out, and 2 years later the guy is gone and a new one is coming, and have that. And in Japan, it is very important to have the consistency and patience. What Japanese people don't like is a lot of change, quick. We need to change, we need to get better, we need to adapt to new things, technology, now Corona, working from home, came out of the blue. We had to do it. So we have to adapt and we have to change, and we have to go forward. But also, all the time, I say, okay, well, we need to value what has been done in the past. And you can never say, oh, that was a wrong decision, because, I mean, we don't know what was the status quo at that time. At that time, it maybe was the right decision. Today, it is not, right, from the day's point of view. And that, I think, is very important.
And engagement is one of those things that comes up in Japan all the time. You know, I've been in big organizations that do staff surveys for engagement, do research engagement. Do you have those similar things in Japan?
We did not do any staff engagement survey over the last 4 years, I think. Engagement, of course, that is something where you always need to work on how to engage the people more, because in Japan, people are naturally a little bit reserved in stepping up. Right? If you have a meeting now, for example, we're having a lot of online meetings around the world, and you can see other nations, they stepping out, and they come out and say and participate, whereas all the participants from Japan, you won't hear anybody raising a hand and saying anything.
And why is that?
Basically, want to stay undercover.
And why do they want to stay undercover?
Because afraid of saying something wrong, or afraid of making a mistake. And that is something which is very deep founded in the culture. And So in Japan, the team is more than the individual. And that's also something what we need to somehow accept. Though, as a leader, we need to encourage them to come up with their ideas by asking them specifically open, calibrated questions. How do you think on that? Maybe not in front of all the people, but maybe on a one-on-one or something like that. And
so in leading a Japanese team of people who don't want to step out or stick out, worried about being incorrect or saying the wrong thing, it means there's a lot more work on the part of the leader to engage them one-on-one, because that takes time. Is this been your experience? You had to spend a lot more time, one-on-one engagement, to really bring people up, or how have you found that?
I think it is necessary to spend more time to have for each manager your one-on-one moment. I did that at the moment. I fall a little bit back on it, but I did scheduled weekly one-on-one calls with all my direct reports for quite some time. And that is then basically helping to have the dialogue, the conversation and the scheduled conversation, and also to create accountability and follow-up. And this actually is an important factor to do.
And so I was saying before about the engagement surveys, people, according to those scores, most of the time they're not very good for Japan. Japan is usually the bottom of the world in the answers to those scores. But so you always have this pressure from headquarters to get the Japanese more engaged, you know. And so it comes back to that question of how do you know if people are engaged, and how do you get them to be more engaged?
You know that people are engaged from the quality of the feedback you get, from the quality of the work you get, and also when you're having a close communication with the staff, you can understand that somebody is engaged or if somebody is disengaged.
And if they're disengaged or not sufficiently engaged, what do you do about that?
You need to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. How? What do you say?
Basically, here in Japan also we need to consider also a little bit a hierarchy. So I'm the managing director. I'm sitting in this office and walking around, and I see that some staff in the, let's say, ocean freight department seems not so engaged. I should go first to the ocean freight manager and talk to him, or rather than walking straight up to the guy and say, "Hey, what's going on?" Right? You cannot do that. It's depending on the thing. I mean, you need to value the face and the thing. That doesn't mean that I would not go and talk directly on some of the things, but these are things what you have to consider in this culture, that you have a manager, you have a certain hierarchy, and you need to follow certain rules to approach certain things, right? I mean, in Japan, we also have a lot this kind of nemawashi, which is basically
groundwork,
sorting out the things before we go into the discussion. And this is also a very important part of the world.
So I think in a lot of Western societies, the sort of, dynamic leader, if he sees something, he goes straight to the person and sorts it out and moves on, and very efficient, time efficient. But as you say, Asia and Japan in particular, I think that hierarchy, face, saving face, keeping face, are very, very important. And so we need to make sure that everyone's face is preserved. There's a way of doing things here, isn't there, that's a little bit maybe different from the West, and having that sensitivity to it is important. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. So thinking about, engagement, getting people engaged, I mean, it's one thing I've always thought that, if people are engaged, then they're looking for opportunities to make things better. But if you're not engaged, particularly, I turn up, I do my job, I go home, all right, they're not particularly thinking about innovation. They're not particularly stimulated to think about innovation. So the first fundamental requirement for innovation is that people have a sense of engagement. So if you've got that, then you've got the tools to try and work with a team to become innovative. So how do you approach innovation inside the company?
I mean, we encourage innovation in a way that we, asking the people to think what can be done better. How can we innovate? How can we innovate our processes? How can we get better with our processes? We also have a very strong management of our so-called the key performance indicators for ourselves, the KPIs that we want. In our business world, in shipping, how fast we execute a shipment, how quick we are going to do the billing, how when we finalize the billing, how accurate is the billing, and all those things to work in a team collaborative and getting them to give their proposals as well of how to innovate. And
so just on that with the KPIs, have you got a very well-ordered, well-institutionalized system of KPI creation and tracking in the company?
Yes, we do that.
So someone could be sitting in headquarters looking at different KPI achievements and noticing, for example, I'll just make it up in Japan, that one particular KPI was taking a bit longer or didn't seem to be getting the right number, and this would flag some attention. Is it that type of system, or is it sort of stop with you?
No, it's actually such type of system that we are monitoring our KPIs. We gave ourselves KPIs globally in terms of our operational excellence, how we would like to proceed in our operations, and we measure that. And there are high-level calls with our head office and regional office on a monthly basis, where we go through all those KPI categories. And this is cascaded down onto the operator level, that we make sure and measure certain things like billing accuracy, on-time billing, and how we are now looking much more into our automation, how we can automate our processes more to avoid mistakes and stuff. This is all done on a very high level. We have one person who is monitoring this and working with the team to improve our performance here in Japan.
Right.
And there also, when it comes to innovation or new ideas, what is very important is that, well, if things go wrong, and they're all the time going wrong, right? We should not fuss too much about why it went wrong or what. We accept it, admit it, and then move on, basically. In a particular example right now, we had an idea to centralize some operations within all Japan to make it more efficient. It has turned out that it's not going to work, and so instead of now trying and trying and trying, we said, okay, well, we are going to scale. We're going to go back and going to do the old individual process, because what we learned along the even the idea was very excellent to do it, but what we learned along the idea is, okay, that the system process that we have requires that a large function of the job has to be done individually. So that's the centralization point for that particular operation was obsolete. So we said, okay, I didn't blame anybody on that. And I said, okay, well, it seems like it didn't work out the way we wanted to do it. So we took this experience, and now go back and do it differently.
So was that a single individual's idea? Was that your idea? I mean, where did that idea come from? Because how we judge ideas, as you say, not everything's going to work. But in a lot of companies, failure is not, tolerated. People are punished. There's a lot of people are hesitant to put their ideas up because of that. So if you've got an environment where you're encouraging innovation, you've also got to accept failure, right? So was that your idea? Was it somebody else's idea? How do you treat that person? Or how do you treat yourself if it didn't work?
Well, I mean, basically, the idea in the beginning of doing the centralization for that particular operation was coming out of a collaborative from the team's decision. We had some issues in the past where we said, okay, well, also related to the KPIs, where if we would like to get better with that, so it seems like it would be better to centralize it. And then we decide, okay, let's centralize it. And over the course of the last year, we realized it doesn't work.
And then you move on from there, right?
Yes.
So you didn't fail, you just learnt.
No, I did not. I would not discredit anybody on that one.
Now, how do you deal with failure? How do you deal with mistakes? Because Japan, as we know, is a mistake-free zone. It's like mistakes not allowed, defects not allowed. Often with foreign companies, the CFO will, particularly manufacturing or processes, will work out we have a 95% success rate and a 5% fail rate, and the cost of fixing that 5% is this much. But to have 100% zero fail rate, the cost is this much. So we'll go for the 5% fail rate, except in Japan, no, it must be 100%, no fail. So you're trying to adjust these ideas from the West to Japan, and therefore, how do you think about failure? How do you think about mistakes inside the company? Because you're talking about innovation. Naturally, it's a messy process. So how does that fit together inside the company, and how do you approach that?
We cannot avoid that everything is going smooth all the time. What we have to do is we have to accept that we sometimes have a failure, and depending on the seriousness of the failure, we have to take measure. And I'm promoting a communication in this company that if we have a problem and if we have a mistake, we should come forward, and we are going to deal with it in an honest process. And because what we would like to avoid is that it's going under the carpet.
Which in Japan is very, very... Japanese to me are like ninja at hiding things from the boss. I've been a boss here in a number of companies, and you always find out you are definitely the last to find out what's really going on. And I always worry about that, because I always say to people, look, I have the money, I have the authority, I have the decision-making power to fix things, but I need time. I need to have some runway there to get the fix going. But if you come to me at the very last moment, I may have all those other things. Capability is there, but I don't have the time now to fix it. The door is closed. We've lost that. So if you've got a problem, own up. But it's not so easy in Japan to get people to tell you that they've done something wrong or something hasn't gone well. So how do you solve that problem as a leader?
I try to look at the problem first and not at the person. So a lot of times, if you're dealing with mistakes or with dealing with failure, especially if they cost a lot of money, then you tend to get emotional as to why did this happen and why are we so stupid that we do that or something like that. But in these situations, you need to be calm and you need to look at the problem first. Okay, what's the problem? How was it caused? What were the reasoning on that one? And then look at it and take it from there. You need to separate the problem from the person.
And often, though, the boss in Japan, for example, that problem, if it's got a lot of money attached to it, it isn't just a problem noticed in Japan, and typical, you get a phone call from your boss and he's really telling you off, about that mistake in Japan. So you become very emotional because you're getting all this aggression from your own boss. And often it's very common that people pass that straight on down the line to the guilty party, and they get the full blast of all this emotion. So in those situations, how do you circuit break where you're getting told off by the boss, but you somehow manage to adjust yourself and then don't go after the person, you go after the problem? It sounds easy in theory. Yeah. How do you do it in practice?
Went. The greatest, the biggest easy thing is before you go into a negotiation or into a difficult conversation, let's put it that way, to basically vent. Right? What do I mean with vent? With vent, I mean, look for a person who is not involved.
Mrs. Wolf, for example.
Yeah, for your wife, for example, or a friend, and tell him what you all don't like about that, and get the negative emotion out, and then you're much more calmer when you approach the situation. That is something what I learned is sometimes or is helping me a lot to get over this stress of getting into rage or something like that.
The other thing I noticed about Japan, apart from them being ninja and hiding things, when mistakes happen and it becomes apparent it's their fault, often they also go into sort of, self-depressing mode of I'm useless, I can't do this, I'm no good. They're really hard on themselves and drive themselves down. So their whole engagement just sinks to the ground, completely. So how do you balance out that part where, yes, there's been a mistake, you have to rescue the situation on one side, and that's money, power, time to do that, but also to rescue the person so that they don't wipe themselves out? How do you deal with that rebuild the person part?
You need to encourage them, and it all comes down to communication, to personal communication, how you are dealing with that person, how you are dealing with the managers involved, because frankly speaking, sometimes the problem arrives at my desk at the last moment, and then I'm somehow there to extinguish the fires, and so if I look back at some cases what we had in the past, you need to communicate in an open way, and you need to also talk positive to the person and tell him, okay, well, as an example, you're all the time your performance is very well and you get a lot of praise from the customers. This time something happens. So I mean, we need to work on it, and I think that's very important to talk to them and encourage them, and don't get down much more on the things, and or to demotivate them more. You need to motivate them, even if the problem is there. I mean, it can happen. It happened to. You need also. I would say, okay, well, I mean, I made a mistake, and this was this and this and this, and that happened. So, well, I mean, compared to yours, it's not that big, something like that. So, basically, make the mistake seem to be easy corrected, kind of.
And with that, my native language is English. I'm very good in the nuances and the fluency of my own native language.
Yes.
Your native language is German.
Yes.
And you and I both operate in English and Japanese. So you're operating in two non-native languages here in Japan. I'm only operating in one. So how does that work? Because, I know English is very direct. It's quite clear. Japanese is not direct. It's not clear. And I don't have the vocabulary in Japanese that I have in English to have that subtlety, to have that little nuance, to express something in the right way that I can do in English. My Japanese tends to be like my English. It tends to be limited vocabulary, so it tends to be quite blunt. I don't know how to say things in that very circuitous, very misty way that Japanese do it. So how do you get on when you're dealing with those situations in a foreign language? For you, it's either English or Japanese. They're both foreign languages. And your English is native speaker level, no question about that. But still, we're not native speaker Japanese level.
Well, I mean, one advantage what I have as a non-native speaker of two languages is that I most likely speak a little bit slower to the Japanese person than what now a native English speaker is doing. Sometimes they are too fast.
Yeah.
And this too fast, making the ears shut more. Of course, this is a very big problem. And a lot of issues we have in sometimes in the communication is this kind of communication mistakes where I don't find, for example, the exact word in English, and also I don't find the exact word in Japanese, though I try to explain certain things in Japanese, but if I speak Japanese, it will never have a native nuance. It maybe have a little bit of childish nuance sometimes, right? I would say, but that is something which is difficult, and then it is necessary also to have a maybe an HR person together involved, or the Japanese manager, that we are looking at the case and discussing together with the employee on how the things are done, or finding a way to communicate it in easy, understandable language. I mean, if it comes to solving certain problems, then easy Japanese language maybe helps a lot to understand than if you are speaking a very high sophisticated Japanese and the other person doesn't get the nuance to that.
So in a way, our linguistic limitations help us to be clearer because we've got fewer words to confuse people. So it also raises the question about trust, because Japan is a very trust-based society. And people make emotional decisions to buy from you based on trust, not logical necessarily. It's often, I trust you, I'll use you, and I'll keep using you because I trust you. So how do you build trust within the team? You know, you had to go from 11 people to 100 people. How did you build trust with everybody when you made that big jump?
Well, I mean, it's something what you are building over time, and building trust is basically, everything what you are doing is building trust. The way you appear, the way you talk, the way you treat other people, the way you talk to other people, the way how you are approaching certain business, the way you are helping, are you criticizing, are you running around the floor and screaming around, all those kind of things are helping to build the trust. And that is, I think, what within the team, what really helps. I mean, it must not be always, okay, yeah, this is the friendly guy and he's always smiling. But also you need to be firm sometimes on certain things, what you expect them to deliver, a certain quality of deliverables, how we do certain things, what do we deliver, is this done on time, what happens if this is not submitted on time, and all those things what we do. But I think building trust here has a lot to do in punctuality, how you act, how you talk, what tone of voice you're speaking, how you interact with the people. Are you doing the effort of studying this language? It's a very big thing. A lot of times, even if you are not 100% perfect in this language, only the effort of studying this language gives you already a 10-point up on the trust scale. Because Japanese people think that their language is the most difficult language in the world.
I agree with them.
And that is actually helping to doing that.
Yeah. And how do you create trust at different levels? Because you've got your 100 people is a lot of people. So you've got departments, you've got people working, down at the bottom there, people up at the top. How do you drive that sense of trust through the organisation so that what you think is happening in your level, where you're positioned, is actually happening down at the bottom? Because you probably have a vision, a direction for the company, you have a set of values for the company, vision, mission, all those sorts of things. How do you make sure that all of those things are actually reality for the people at the very bottom?
I have an open communication also to down to the bottom. I mean, I managed to talk to all my employees by the name. I know the name of all my employees, and if I walk by and I notice something, I have a small talk with the people. So if I'm going to visit a branch office in Nagoya at the airport, where I go 2 times a year, I take a time to talk to each and every person. And if I go to the other branch office, I sit down and talk to them, and what about that job, and try to empathize with them on to hear also from them what is going on, how they cope with the state of emergency, or for example, or working from home, if this is good or bad, what kind of difficulties they have. So I think that is a very important part to be able to talk to the people, and don't have this kind of hierarchies. Okay, so you're just there, I don't talk to you. So I mean, every employee in this company is a very valuable employee, and everybody has his job, and everybody is also working here, coming here, and investing his time and energy every day. So I need to treat the people the way they would like to be treated.
Mm-hmm. And with that, you've got a large workforce now suddenly working from home. For you as a leader, what have been some of the challenges that leading now a virtually, I guess, remote workforce has thrown up?
It's difficult to do that. Some things are pretty good done at home, right? I mean, sometimes these management meetings or Zoom calls, they are better done at home because they tend to be long, so you're early at home. Leading the team sometimes has difficulties. You also need to increase the communication and need to have an open communication doing that. I think the whole working from home is actually very good. We can achieve maybe better productivity in some areas, but in other areas we are not going to have so much productivity. And frankly speaking, we feel that our business is very much depending on team conversations and team collaboration, and that is a little bit falling behind in the teleworking things. And I say that because in the teleworking you are focused on the meeting only 10 to 11, and after that you shut off. While when you are in the office and having the meeting, you walk by and say, oh, by the way, how about that? Or you're having the meeting, a discussion, and then after that meeting, you are going to continue talking about other things, what is very important. And this is really what makes up the company and how to go forward. So I'm a little bit afraid that with too much of telework, it is going to be that we're somehow falling behind in certain areas. So prior to Corona, we would go out for a drink once in a while, and getting all the little things that is under the surface. Now, at the moment, we are not supposed to do that, and we also don't. But I mean, the last whole year, we didn't have any nomikai with our team. It's just impossible. Huh? And that is something which is very important in Japan sometimes to do. So this is actually it's a good thing. On the other hand, we have to do it wisely and we have to react quickly if we feel that certain things go wrong. For example, we had a case in our company where employee wrote to the customer, sorry, I can't do that because I'm working from home.
Oh, okay.
He was honest, but the customer didn't like it. So these are the things which we have to overcome. But overall, I think it's we need to do it. For me personally, I prefer coming to the office.
You like it, yeah. If you had to give, say, one piece of advice to someone who was going to be sent to Japan, okay, please go to Japan, take over the operation there, run it. What would be some advice you'd give a new person, new to Japan?
Number one, never tell your colleagues how long your assignment is.
Why is that?
Because if you come to Japan as a new leader, you're sent as an expat from your head office into Japan to lead a certain team. It will get you a certain time you will need to get into the market, into the thing what you are doing. If you come to Japan and tell, well, I'm only here for 2 years, then they say, okay, so I don't need to tell this and I don't need to tell that because that guy is then gone in 2 years and then another one is coming. So just make sure that he has a good time. So
very insightful.
You get in there. And another advice is never give up.
Never give up.
You need to have a lot of frustration tolerance in this market, in this country, to get along. Sometimes don't ask the why, just accept it. If you think something is strange, why do they do this here? Just accept it. And try to learn the language.
Mm-hmm. How long did it take you to learn Japanese to a reasonable level?
I'm now still studying Japanese now for about 19 years now.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you, I would say, if you do once a week Japanese, it takes you maybe 3 years to get to a relatively low level. I would say you need about 5 years to get your good way around. Right? I mean, if somebody comes here and wants to start Japanese, take the effort and go 2 times a week a private lesson that is going to
really concentrated
private lesson, and that is getting you further.
Well, thank you very much. I know you've got a tight schedule today.
Thank you
so
very much.
I'll respect your tight schedule. I'd love to keep going because I feel we can keep going more and more here. But thank you very much. So this has been a really great chat with Christian. He's got a lot of good experience in Japan and a lot of good insights, and I learned a lot today. So join us again for the next episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews.